Hi everyone, my name is Vanessa van Dijk, and in today's video I want to talk about a comment I got under one of my community posts where I shared a breakfast that has been consistently working well for me. Now the person wrote, "None of this is backed by science. None. The speculations are that it could be coffee, dairy, bananas and cocoa that cause acne, but it's very individual. One person reacts to coffee, another to dairy. Only processed sugar is considered a universal acne trigger." And the most interesting part here is this idea of universal triggers. Because what tends to happen is that the people repeat them like absolute rules, and sugar is one of them. Now I reply to that comment explaining how I see it, that for me, sugar itself is definitely not causing my acne. If anything, it's what comes along with it. For example, when you eat a pastry, yes, it's high in sugar, but it also contains a lot of other ingredients that could be causing issues. But the response I got back is what this video is really about. And just to be clear, I'm not blaming the person here. This is not about that specific comment. It's something broader that needs to be said. Because in a reply to my reply, they said, "As for sugar, it's interesting. I don't have any specific reactions to it on my skin either, even though every information source I've seen says it's the biggest enemy." And just think about that for a second. You have a direct result. Nothing happens, and you still call it a universal trigger. At that point, your own observation isn't a reference anymore, but the rule is. And once that happens, you're stuck in a system you can't really get out of. Because no matter what happens, the rule stays right. If you break out after sugar, it confirms the rule. If you don't, then you didn't eat enough, you didn't wait long enough, or something else interfered. So the outcome is always the same. The rule holds and your result gets adjusted to fit it. And I think that's where it becomes a real issue. Because now you're no longer looking at what's actually happening. You're trying to make your experience match something that was never based on your situation in the first place. And the problem isn't even that there are patterns. The problem is that the outcome isn't consistent. You don't get one clear direction. You get mixed results. And from that, people still create fixed rules. And the reason this works so well is simple. You're not in a lab. You're not testing one thing. You're eating mixed meals, your stress changes, and your environment changes. So isolating a single cause is almost impossible. I've tried doing that myself for 2 years, and I'm still doing it today, tracking things daily, and it just doesn't work in a clean way. There were even moments where my husband jokingly asked me if I wanted dessert now or later while we were talking about possible triggers. I said, "Let's have it now." Then we continued talking, and right after that he said, "Well, now your test is already mixed." And that's exactly the point. In real life, everything overlaps. That's the level of control you would need to actually test this cleanly. And that's just not how real life works. And when this happens across a lot of people, you end up with what I would call a consensus rule. And when I say consensus rule, I just mean something that gets repeated so often that people start treating it like a fact, even if it doesn't clearly work in most cases. Which means these rules can't really be challenged in real life. They just stay in place. And over time, that creates this strange situation where even when something clearly doesn't affect you, you still treat it like it does. So at some point, you have to ask yourself, what are you actually basing your decisions on? Something you've been told, or what you can directly observe for yourself? If something doesn't produce a consistent outcome, then turning it into a universal rule doesn't really make much sense. Because if those two don't match and you still choose the rule, then your own results don't really matter anymore. And at that point, you're no longer trying to figure out what works, you're just trying to fit into something that was never based on you to begin with. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!